Welcome back to the Down Below, where I'll be recapping and reviewing episode 7 of Silo. For those of you who haven't seen episode 7 yet, yes, it's the best episode we've received to date, and it continues to build and deliver on the highs of episode 6. But I am going to be discussing key plot details, so this is your spoiler warning. And as usual, don't miss out on our new YouTube channel that we're launching called The Horror Exchange. Links down below. I've been reading and responding to a lot of the comments left by you guys since I started covering Silo, and we're pretty much in unison about our opinions on each episode. I think we can all agree that last week upped the ante a lot after a few weeks of sedentary filler episodes, which started to put a lot of people off. And I completely agree that the show is at a pivotal point in the series where we have to be rapidly ascending towards the finale. And I'm pleased to say that all of my hopes are finally coming into fruition, and rather than continuing down a dormant plotline, the episode has picked up immediately from episode 6 with the introduction of Gloria Hildebrand, a patient of long-term care. Gloria is hallucinating heavily in the opening scene and standing on a beach, holding a seashell and looking out to the sea, before the shot then regresses back into her dingy hospital room, where she's simply staring at a blank wall before being jabbed with some kind of sedative. Gloria is absolutely paramount to the success of this episode, and we'll discuss her more in detail later on in the video. The first scene of Juliet is a continuation of her reading the travel guide of Georgia before looking at the names written on the opening page. Gloria is the first name on there, suggesting that she was the original owner of the relic. And this forms the general premise for the episode, where Juliet is trying to locate Gloria to open a heavy line of questioning. From an antagonist perspective, the ending of episode 6 left us wondering who was the boss overseeing the control room where they're watching all the residents of the silo. Well, unsurprisingly, it's Sims, who I thought had a strong episode here. And in the few scenes that he was a part of, we were treated to what lies behind the janitorial door, which is just a secret passage that leads into the control room. Very nice, and a decent eyebrow raiser. Julia tracks down Gloria and sees that she's clearly worse for wear and not in a fit state to lift the lid on any silo secrets. I mean, look at the state of that. Ainsley Harriet's suit with a day is more conscious than Gloria, who's definitely in Excelsis Deo at this point. The nurse is adamant that Gloria is suffering from dementia and that Judge Meadows has set an order to keep her in long-term care. So Juliet sets off on her travels to the Judicial Department to visit Judge Meadows, who I must say has some cool-looking relics in her house for decoration, such as an Etch-a-Sketch and a Frisbee. Very nice touch. Of course, Judge Meadows is looking slightly worse for wear and is feeling a little bit under the weather, which was hinted to in episode 6. But it's uncovered that, not surprisingly, she doesn't pull the strings for Judicial and is pretty much just a front for their systematic decisions. I also enjoyed the few scenes that Billings was in. He's being painted as an honest family man who just wants to do the right thing. We get a nice moment where his wife brings his lunch to work, which he's forgotten, whilst holding their newborn baby. And additionally, he has to go to a riot that happens in the square without Juliet because she's busy investigating Gloria's situation, to which he comes away pretty scathed. He does lose his cool though with Juliet and finally flips out on her for dishonouring the badge because she's always going off doing her own thing instead of fulfilling her duties as the sheriff. He asks for total honesty from Juliet, who finally gives in and states that George Wilkins, Marnes, Johns and Trumbull were all murdered, and she has absolutely no idea what she's doing as sheriff. It's a nice moment of vulnerability between the two characters, and Billings' knowledge of the pact comes in handy when he states that they can reopen the investigation into George Wilkins' death because it's part of an ongoing wider investigation into the relics. I've noticed that the show does keep painting Billings in a positive light and building his character. As a reviewer, I'm naturally suspicious of this because it makes me wonder if he's going to carry out some heroic act in the finale that sees him die on behalf of Juliet or something like that. But as usual, we'll just have to wait and see. For the third episode in a row, Juliet and her stargazing counterpart cross paths in the cafeteria. He reveals that he works as a systems analyst in IT. They talk about shooting stars and I want to kiss you. And Juliet then retreats and leaves, with this scene not going anywhere further in this episode. Mayor Bernard also tells Juliet that he's received a threat from Judge Meadows for defending Juliet when Sims suggested that she planted evidence in the apartment of Trumbull, and states that IT are probably the most important department in the silo. They control the servers, which are responsible for how messages are transmitted, how crops are watered, and the circulation of air throughout the silo. And if this fell into the wrong hands, i.e. Judicial, they'd be in complete control of everyone, and that they needed to come up with a plan to wall Meadows in and prevent this possibility from occurring. And then the episode turns a corner. Juliet is sitting outside her father's house, Dr. Nichols, and she proceeds to ask him to help her take Gloria out of long-term care for a while because she believes that she's being drugged against her will. He agrees to help her and he gives Gloria something to reverse the sedation she's already under. I liked the flashback in this scene that Julia gets when she's holding the hand of Gloria, where she reminisces about holding the hand of her younger brother, who was critically ill in her past, whilst her father stood on the other side of him. It's very clear that there's a shared trauma between Juliet and her father, and it's obvious that this plays a major part in the reason that they've grown apart over the decades. The show has included something that echoes society very closely. This happens all of the time where partners, for example, can't sustain a healthy relationship after the loss of a young child, and it drives a wedge between them, making the relationship insurmountable. A very real yet touching plot inclusion. Gloria finally comes around and it's frightening just how long she's been sedated for. She doesn't recognise Juliet as the sheriff, expecting to see Sheriff Holston there, but surprisingly she does recognise Dr. Nichols, screaming that he works for them and he's one of them who stopped her from having a baby by lying about removing her birth control. This is a great link back to the 100-day window from episode 1, where Holston and his wife were trying to conceive, but the birth control was still implanted to prevent this. Things are starting to be joined together now and come full circle at this stage in the series, and the bigger questions are finally being answered, which is great. Juliet shows Gloria the travel guide and she states that she handed it down to George's mother and that she was part of a group called the Flame Keepers, the title for this episode. The Flame Keepers were eradicated by the silo and they put something in their water to erase their memories. The Flame Keepers are people who fought back to keep their memories alive before their flames were permanently extinguished. A cruel attempt at terminating their existence was to let them die out naturally by stopping them from having children. This is just so tactful, isn't it? There's something really devastating about silently preventing them from reproducing to naturally kill them off. Pretty dark stuff. George's mother also knew Juliet's mother, Anna Nichols, and she shared the same curiosity for the truth that the Flame Keepers had, which I guess shows a sense of legacy and fate for what Juliet is trying to accomplish. After processing all of this information, Juliet wheels Gloria back to long-term care before people realise that she's gone. Once there, Gloria says to Juliet that the flowers that she used to have next to her mirror were gone and that Holston always used to leave her flowers next to the mirror. Juliet realises that they're being watched through the mirror. Whilst back in the control room, Sims utters the words, "Send the raiders." And once they arrive, Juliet is gone. Ah, man, what a great episode. It was just packed with plot progression from the outset, and it was left on a really good cliffhanger at the end. I'm really glad also that the series is finally moving in this direction now, because there was a bit of a lull in the middle of the season, which I think was expected, but it's well and truly used those filler episodes as a springboard to finish the season on a strong point now. Juliet knows far too much, Sims knows that, and they're in full-on pursuit of her. But what did you think of episode 7? Let me know all your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments section. I've been your host, Hugh from Unleash the Ghouls. Don't forget to subscribe to the Horror Exchange, and I'll see you next week down below for another review of The Silo.